Hello. Quite a lot of you have been asking about when should you write verse for very young children and have I got any tips? Well, I've given it some thought. If you are going to, how do you choose whether you're going to do that or not? Obviously, firstly, it's because you like to rhyme yourself. You enjoy rhyming couplets, etc. But if your book's aimed at kids older than 7, I would suggest you don't use rhyming verse. Why is that? Well, it's because young kids love verse and older kids think that's what they did when they were younger, and it feels uncool. It feels like it's for babies. So once kids get to about 7 or 8, if a book's in verse, it can be a real put-off for them. A second reason to think about verse, or rather to think about not using verse, is because if you want to go to a traditional publisher, they're averse to verse. The reason they're averse to verse generally is because for the book to be very successful for them commercially, they do need to try and make it work in multiple languages. And if you're translating into Spanish or French, you need a very successful, a very, very skilled translator who's good at verse form, not just at translating. And that equals expensive. They're hard to come by. And so publishers are kind of stuck with the original English language version if it's in verse. If you knock it out of the park and it's a huge success, then it won't be a problem for the publishers because there'll be plenty of time and money to get it translated into other languages successfully. But anyway, if you put those two things aside, if you really think your story works best in verse, then I've got 2 important tips for you. The first is write it out as non-rhyming prose as well, just as an exercise for yourself. Why? Because you've got to know the story works on its own. You can't support a bad story with verse. And often the story gets pulled out of shape because you might fall in love with a particular rhyming couplet, and it kind of takes the story off. It's a common mistake. It's a mistake I often make too. So make sure it works just as a story in prose as well. That's for yourself. It's an exercise. Second, and this is the hardest bit to do, but I do encourage you to do it, send the verse to a lot of friends. Ask them to record themselves. Ask them to read it out loud onto their phone with a camera so you can see them recording it. Why? Because you must see where they stumble. You must see it for yourself. You must see how they stumble. So don't let them rehearse this. Don't let them see it ahead of time. Ask them to open the verse up and read it straight away. They falter if any syllable is in the wrong place, if the meter is wrong anywhere. People will falter. You can hear the meter in your head. You know how it should be read, but the writing itself must clearly dictate how it should be read. You're not going to be sitting there beside every reader going, no, not like that. You're supposed to read it like this. The writing itself must clearly dictate. Okay, so you need to be very, very brave. See where these readers stumble, because when they do, it's not their fault, it's your writing. And you will be shocked and surprised at how many times people falter. So even though it's a tough exercise, you need to do it because good verse can maybe take 20, 30 drafts for each line to get that meter really, really, really bumping along with every syllable hitting its place in the line. Okay, cheers.